So, good morning, everyone. My name is Trish Schaefer. I'm the Executive Director of the Career Development Center here at St. Joseph's University, and it is my pleasure to welcome you today to Industry Insights, Careers, and Social Justice. I'm going to introduce our panelists who will share what it takes to lead organizations focused on social justice and inequalities, and insight into career options and steps to take to prepare for career and social justice. So I am so honored that you've all joined us today. I am going to offer a brief introduction to everybody of our panelists, but I'd also like to direct you to the chat where we have posted a link to everybody's full bios, okay? If I were to read the full bios, we would be here for another 15 minutes and you might all just, step out for a moment. We're not gonna do that. I'll give you a brief overview and then we'll get right into the questions for the panel. So let's meet our panelists. Today, we're going to hear from the following social justice leaders, and I'm going to start with Christian Nunez, who serves as the president of NOW, the National Organization for Women. Ms. Nunez, MBA, MS, LCSW, is a licensed clinical social worker, consultant, and a woman minority business owner since 2006. She received her BSW degree from Northern Arizona University, Master of Science from Columbia University, and Master of Business Administration from the University of Phoenix. Christian, nice to have you. Next, I'll introduce Sarah Woods, who serves as the Executive Director of Philadelphia Futures. Sarah holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Penn State University and a Juris Doctorate and a Master's of Public Administration from Villanova University. She is also an adjunct professor at Villanova University School of Law, where she teaches a public interest lawyering course. Welcome, Sarah. And lastly, I will introduce Melanie Hidalgo-Britt, who serves as the Chief Revenue Officer for Coded by Kids. Melanie holds a BS in Chemistry and an MS in Marketing from St. Joseph's University, go Hawks, where she conducted inorganic chemistry research before realizing her talent for designing business strategy steeped in social responsibility and equity. Coded by Kids aim to create an educational pipeline from grade school to post-college that funnels young people into high-growth tech careers, enables Melanie to approach reparative social justice through an economic lens. Welcome, everybody. We are waiting for one more panelist, and when she arrives, we'll be sure to welcome her as well. Okay, welcome, everybody. Let's get started, and thanks to everybody tuning in today. So, Christian, let's start with you. This question is for everybody, but we'll start with you. I wonder if you could briefly share the mission of the organization you lead and what led you to work there.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be a part of this panel on social justice. So I am the president of the National Organization for Women, and our mission is really to represent women's rights from an intersectional perspective. We move forward to women's equality, gender equality from an intersectional lens, where we're representing marginalized women as a whole to make sure women are represented and provided equal rights across the board. So it's basically the easiest way to describe it. We are from women's rights, women's equality. We have 6 core issues that we represent. That's constitutional equality, or as people know as Equal Rights Amendment, reproductive justice, reproductive rights, economic justice, LGBTQIA+ issues. We have racial justice, the core issue, violence against women. And so these are some of our main issues that we focus and move forward on. And it's really important to us that all the work we do it considering all these issues as we move forward. And that drives all the work that we do, our 6 core issues.
That's great. Thank you so much. Melanie, would you like to go next?
Sure. Everyone, fellow Hawk here. I'm really excited to be on the panel. Coded by Kids is an organization fighting inequity through tech education and for underrepresented students. So we focus on underrepresented, not underserved or low income, because when you only look at it from an economic lens, you miss the barriers to success that are caused by systemic racism. We have classes that teach not only just coding, but tech innovation to prepare for today's changing world. Everything's so tech driven. So we teach coding, but also user experience, design thinking, problem solving, our classes start at age 8 and go up to age 18 in person and through age 24 through our online courses. I think the other part of the course is how I got into it and why. I've always had an inner need to provide service. I did a lot of volunteering at St. Joe's, and always lived by the thought that to those that have been given much, much is expected. I wanted to join an organization that, wouldn't just be helping people now, but helping people for the future. And all the work we are doing is for the future and trying to change the generational wealth gap, which everybody knows has been deepening more and more as time has gone on. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you. And Sarah, with futures in your title, obviously it's a great segue. Also focused on the future. Why don't you tell us about your mission and what drew you to the role?
Sure. And one of the reasons I love these is I learn. It's continual learning. And so, Melanie, I appreciate how you shared about the lens that you take to your work. So we are a college access and success organization. Our primary pool of students that we focus on are folks who are the first in their families to go to college, where there is a significant number of those folks in Philadelphia. And we also focus on low income, although the income piece is something that we're also talking about as we go through an anti-racist transformation. So I appreciated hearing that from Melanie as well. We work with students from 9th grade through college graduation, whenever that is. So we're with students for a long time. We really appreciate it. Appreciate that opportunity to develop that relationship. I got into this work because I'm a social justice lawyer, and education is a fundamental right, and it's inequitable, and I want to be a part of changing that.
Great. Thank you so much. So we're going to shift a little bit to the careers aspect of this panel. And I just want to share that, students so often feel that the first job that they take when they enter the workforce will define them for life, right? And they put a lot of pressure on themselves to pick the perfect job or the industry or the company when really, they're literally just getting started. So would you each share with the audience, what was your first job out of college and how does it relate, if at all, to what you're currently doing? Sarah, let's go back to you.
Sure. Well, I was originally going to say babysitting, but since that was not my first job out of college, it was certainly one of my first jobs. Other than polishing shoes, that was a big thing in my family. So I worked as a sexual assault counselor right out of undergrad. I had been a student counselor, and that work still speaks to me deeply. So it was a fantastic job and certainly relates to where I'm in right now, but obviously I wasn't an executive director right when I graduated from college. So there's no way that job wouldn't have prepared me, but there were certain key things to that job that I will take with me, which is, in particular, thinking about listening and listening deeply around time management, and also the going above and beyond, which I think most of us probably are doing anyway. But in that job, I realized that my work didn't stop at 5, that it often went till 2 in the morning, and on weekends going to hospitals with victims. So those sort of 3 core tangible things are really important and certainly built on in the rest of my career. The last thing I'd share about that job that felt like it was training for where I'm at today was relationship building. That the relationships I built in that first role I have continued today and have intersected in various different ways. So
It's great. It's all in there, right? It all comes together. Melanie, do you want to go next?
So I have my bachelor's in chemistry, I have my master's in international marketing, and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So just to set the stage for you guys, when I came out of school, while I was getting my master's, I got an internship for a local healthcare company. They created a position for me, so I was very lucky. So out of school, I became a project coordinator. I fast-tracked my way, going above and beyond. They made me the youngest manager in a 300-person organization. We're talking about social justice. So me being a person of color, a woman, 24 years old, I worked for a lot of IT projects. So basically a lot of old white men. We're being very straightforward here. So, you know, you hear taking up space when it comes to women. And I had to learn that on my own very quickly. And that kind of permeates when I talk to students now. You have to, no matter what you're going to do, you have to take up space, live in your own. Getting back to the whole career thing, you know, I have had a lot of different positions from project management. I had my own marketing consulting business, and I've sat on a lot of boards and done a lot of volunteering. What I always tell people that ask me how to get to the job they want is look for a job description for the job you want. You know, if you want to be an ED, if you want to be marketing director, look at that job description and figure out what skills you have, what skills you don't have. Every job has transferable skills. And whether you're getting those skills at your current role, you know, looking for other projects, looking for other ways to get that experience, you can also do it outside of work. I wanted to get into grant writing. So I needed some grant writing experience. So I volunteered at a nonprofit to do grant writing. I did that for a year and a half, and you know, that was enough for me to hit the ground running with grant writing. So even if you're not able to get the skill sets at the job you're at, there are other ways to get it. And you can be 35 and still not know what you want to do.
That's right. God willing, it's a long life, right? And we can do lots of different things that we enjoy doing. So Christian, you want to finish that out for us?
Sure. So I'm a social worker, so my background. So my first job out of undergrad was actually as a victim rights advocate. Undergrad, I did an internship and volunteered as a volunteer victim rights advocate for an organization in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I really liked the experience, so I decided to go ahead and take a year off before going to grad school and work as a victim rights advocate. So I would go out to respond to calls, and I would escort victims of crimes to court and help them work through the process of understanding their rights and things like that. And it really a lot translates right over to what I'm doing in some ways now about advocacy and helping people just know their rights. It really kind of, I mean, it's a direct correlation in some ways. I think for a while I did direct practice and focused more on direct practice, but it all kind of came right back full force to just advocacy. And I've always tended to work in some form of advocacy, from doing community organizing on the streets to helping register people to vote, helping with bond overrides for school districts. I always somehow had my hand involved in organizing in the community and helping the community like be involved and help them like, empower themselves into the process of knowing what's going on and helping them like amplify their voice. And that's always been super important to me because I feel like so many times like people who are writing policy or people who are drafting things are so disengaged and so disconnected from what's really happening in communities. So here I am now, president of NOW, and I'm right back to, and if you hear screaming, I'm sorry. I have a 16-month-old, and this is remote work, right? So hey, remote work lifestyle. But so here we are, and now we are we're doing legislative work. We are trying to help make sure bills and legislations pass that's really advocating for work of rights of gender equity and women's rights and making sure our rights are being held to place. And so I think it all kind of comes full circle to here, you know, now social work has led me right back to doing the work I started out doing, but more on a full scale, more on a legislative scale, more on a federal level. So I think my first job is right back where I'm starting now, just on a grander scheme. So.
Great. That's great. So I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but it doesn't sound like anybody graduated and said, I'm going to be the president of now. I'm going to be the chief revenue officer.
No, absolutely not.
Life just sort of, if your eyes are open and you follow your skills and you follow what your interests are, you'll land in something that's meaningful and uses your best talents. That's what we
Absolutely.
preach here in the Career Development Center. I just want to remind the audience that if you do have questions, to go ahead and put those into the chat, and we will be posing those later to the panelists. So quick reminder there. So in this dizzying pace of new legislation and the pandemic and social justice crises around the world and the country these days, how do you prioritize what to address, and how do you keep your organization motivated and engaged through so much rapid change? Melanie, why don't we kick that off with you?
So it's interesting because, everyone has this focus on inequality, inequity, and we've been doing this work since 2014. That question comes up a lot, but it's status quo for us. This has been an issue. This is an issue, and there's just a greater lens on it. In terms of, what's really funny is we received we're a nonprofit. We received a large influx of funding in June and July, as it would be. And then it trailed off after that. So what that tells us is, George Floyd and everything that's happened since then has energized people and, for lack of a better way of saying it, has caused guilt. And people have been opening their wallets, but now it's kind of petered off. So our challenge is to reinvigorate that. How do you, all the people that have been supporters that have not been looking at you, not been looking at our organization, not been looking at this work, how do we get them to focus on us again, focus on this work, and tell them, hey, it wasn't just a 2-month thing. It's systemic issue that needs to be addressed and will take a long time to build. I mean, we didn't create this, so we need to work together to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Christian, I certainly am in prepping for today. I noticed that you've been very active on Twitter. It seems like there's no shortage of of things for you to address. So yeah, it's a dizzying pace. So how do you do it? How do you keep people motivated and focused?
Melanie brings up such a great point, though. And I think that it's this place we're in, it's getting people, and I always challenge my membership to this, and it's getting people to understand that we are not in a siloed movement. We can't only focus on things temporary. And if we call ourselves true activists, people love to use the word intersectional. And I challenge people in this because I say we're using this word intersectional. We should automatically be intersectional activists, right? Because being an activist is making sure that we're representing the issues of all people. And we are looking at how systems and structural racism, white supremacy, oppression affects everybody. And so as activists, we have to look at that, how it affects everyone and how that intersects different people in different places in their lives. And we have to be willing to fight for everybody's rights. And I challenge people to say, if you're truly being an activist and you're moving in solidarity in a movement, then you have to understand that you have to be willing to fight through the good and the bad and the muck and the muddy, and you can't stop the fight. You can't say, okay, well, hey, we did good here. It's calm. It's never calm. It's never calm from that person who's going through that battle or that struggle, right? Because they're still going through it. Structural racism has been going on our whole entire history of America. It's how America was formed and built, right? It was built on the structures of white and black, ultimately, right? If you really think about how the U.S. was built, it was built on slavery and white. Okay, I'm not excluding indigenous people, but I'm seeing how the structure of the United States was built was on slavery, chattel slavery, and white, right, property. So that's how we built our world. And so, and then on top of that, then we look at indigenous people, and we took their land from them, we put them on certain lands, and then we separated them out, and we took their language from them, and we tried to strip things from them. So we have this whole system of history, how we have isolated, we have oppressed, we have impoverished, and then these people have constantly gone through it, and then it's caused constant inequities, constant inequities, constant inequities. I'm getting to my point, Trish.
I'm wrapped. You're good.
So we have constant inequities. How can we expect 2 months of protests and rallies to solve hundreds of years of inequities? We can't. So we have to continue to fight with these groups that have been struggling. We cannot stop. We cannot stop giving money for 2 months and think that's going to solve hundreds of years. So I encourage people all the time, like, if you're going to be for the cause, you got to be for the cause consistently. For every group who's experiencing an oppression, for every group who's going through a change, you have to constantly be for the cause. I challenge my membership. We are not an asylum movement. We have 6 core issues. You need to be for all 6 core issues. I don't want to hear you say I'm only for this. No, 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 no. We're for all 6 core issues. So I think that's what social justice is really about, is you're being about social justice for all, not just for one.
Great. And Sarah, so you have challenges, I'm sure, but you have your staff and your team, and then you also have these students who are looking forward to this big moment of college, and then COVID hits. And so I'm sure that added an interesting layer of stress to everything. Interesting is that word, right? That it's all interesting this year. So Sarah, what do you think? Sarah, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah. So I appreciate where we can find moments of laughter during this really challenging year, but where we've centered ourselves is really in our students, right? And I think that helps in any time of crisis. What is the core to what we do? It's our students. And so that's where we centered the work. We also dually center it in our staff. And so during this year, what we have focused on is what is best to our students at this moment, in this crisis, in these crises, and how do we shift. So we also have a lens towards innovation at Futures. So thinking, in this crisis, how do we do this differently? How do we do virtual learning? How do we shift to an engaging program where we can't literally hold a student's hand or give them a hug or do any of those pieces where that human connection is so critical. So that's what we focused on. The additional layer to this has been our staff self-care, as well as student self-care. During this, where there is a constant motion, it's important, we have realized, to take a step back and yes, innovate and shift and focus on our students, but pull back and say, how are we also taking a moment to exercise self-care, whatever that looks like. And for us, that was closing on Fridays, shifting our hours, doing things at different times, shifting meetings, a number of different things to make sure that we were addressing the duality of wanting to be student-centered and mission-focused while also making sure that the people who are doing the work could continue to do that work.
Yeah, it's a daily struggle regardless, but things have just gotten definitely more complicated for sure. So when you each hire somebody within your organization, what do you look for on a resume, and what are the characteristics and behavior that a new hire, that successful new hires demonstrate? And I'll add to that, are there examples of entry-level or internship roles that grads can pursue within your organizations that will really help them get that sort of broad view and help them launch? Melanie, would you like to go first?
So above all else, potential and fit. You really can't work with someone that isn't interested in learning. You learn every day. And even though I've been doing this job, there are so many things I don't know. So if you have someone that thinks that they know everything and you can't help them, how does that even work? So the biggest thing is just being open and ready to learn, ready to work hard. And then fit for us. We are a very small organization. There's only 12 of us, and we get a lot done. We don't work 9 to 5s. Whatever you have to do, you do. And we work more like a startup since we do tech and innovation, and our founder, Sylvester, is from tech. We do, I don't know if everyone's going to be aware of this, but we work in sprints, which is more of a tech-related way of doing project management. We do UI, UX, which is user experience, user interface. So, you know, even if you have a lot of potential, even if you have good experience, if it doesn't seem like you're going to meld well with our culture, that's a huge thing. Because we've had instances like that, and what is it? One rotten tomato spoils the pot. That's probably not the right way to say it. I always get those wrong, but you get the gist. In terms of jobs that we have, we hire students in college that have tech experience. So we have an in-house student-run dev shop for college students, and basically they get outside work like any other dev shop would, and they do the product development, they deal with the clients, they figure out the scope, and they execute. So they're getting real world experience while in college. We also have, along with that team, you don't have to have technical experience, but if you want to learn tech, marketing roles, product management roles, and sales roles as well. So we're coming up on looking for those. So I'll give all the information to, you know, the people that be at St. Joe's, and those will be available. And yeah, if anyone's interested in getting into anything like that, I think you can get my email and email me as well.
Great. Thank you. Sarah, how would you respond?
Sure. Well, I think of it in 2 buckets, right? One is when when we're hiring someone and I'm looking at someone's resume, and I've got 300 resumes to look at, right? The thing is, I'm really picky about typos and grammar and all that sort of stuff. So make it perfect. The other pieces, you know, easy to read, you know, functional, all that fun stuff. So spend the time sending there. But the things that we look at is, one, are you committed to the mission, right? Are you centered in, do you have an anti-racist lens? Are you committed to helping first generation college students get to and through college? Are you passionate about that work? That is sort of the, you know, the North Star that we're looking at. But the other things we look at when we're hiring are folks who have, you know, drive, the initiative, the sort of go get them, self-driven. And the ways that I find that are student athletes, right, who know, gosh, how to manage their time, right? Folks who worked during college. All of the students that we serve are working in college. I had 3 jobs during college, right? No, I'm sure many of the students on this call have are balancing work and school. So that says to me that you know how to manage your time if you have a on-campus or off-campus job. I'd love to see experience in working with in a college access world. You know, that can come in many different ways. We love to see folks who speak different languages. I speak Spanish fluently. We have lots of students from who speak many different languages at home. And as we try and connect with their families in particular, having those language skills is critical. The entry, I think those are the key things that we look at, and just making sure that you're being, if your work during college was taking care of your little brother or your little sister or your niece or nephew or whoever it was, I'd love to see that on your resume, because that shows me, again, these sort of, I'm able to manage my time. The entry-level jobs that we have are 2, because mostly we hire folks who have had experience. Because we have such a long relationship with our students, we do want folks to stick around at Futures. But the 2 entry-level jobs is, one, a program assistant that is helping administratively on our high school team or on our college team or our outreach team to move things forward. And then also we have a 1-year fellowship that we have through FEND, which I'm going to forget that acronym, where we have a 3-year, it's a 1-year position, but it's for 3 years, where it's a new grad who applies for the FEND position right now, in fact, to work with us on data and data analytics in our academics department. So those are two options, and I'm happy to share more.
Great, thank you. And Christian, how do you respond?
So now it's a very interesting structure. We have a national action center, which is our national office, and we are very small as well. We typically have between 12 and 15 staff in our national action center based in Washington, D.C. Our positions, we really look at a good fit as well. We don't necessarily require so much educational experiences for a lot of our positions. Some positions do require that, like, of course, like accounting, certain specialized positions require the educational experience. But a lot of our positions are more so ability to fit with the organization, do the job very well. So we sometimes work with individuals who may not necessarily have necessarily degree background, but also may have a lot of organizational experience or community org experience or different degree background, but want to come and work. So for instance, we have like chapter services that oversees all of our chapters throughout the United States. We have member specialists who oversees our membership. We have chief of staff, which works with the president's office, and office coordinators. And those are all kind of like office coordinators or entry-level positions. We have our fund development, director of development, this is our fundraising, different positions. So it kind of all depends on their experiences. We don't necessarily look for you to have lots of years of or degrees, but we look for you to have experience in the field. So we have a really diverse group of staff who kind of some come with like years of working experience, so they've worked their way up, and others come with more academic experience. But we really look for our staff to have a really good fit and gel with our organization because we are so close. And we do also have really odd hours, sometimes traditional work hours, but sometimes we work late when we have actions and campaigns, and sometimes we work evenings, we have conferences and events. So we look for individuals and sometimes we close our office down and we go down to Capitol Hill and we are going to a press briefing. So it's really diverse. So we look for people who are willing to just be able to be flexible, but also be willing to kind of balance the advocacy side and activism side with also being able to do the actual project program side of their job. It's kind of a different place to be able to do both. 1 minute you're with a sign at a rally and the next minute you're programming. And so it's like we look at people who can be flexible to do both of those things a lot of times.
Great. Love it. Love it. So a question did come in from the student, and Melanie did answer in the chat, but I wonder if I could just put it to all of you. And that is, Melanie, the student was asking specifically what you did on SGU's campus, but did anybody do anything in college, specifically a student organization of some kind, some activity that wasn't work, but it was based on school that really you would recommend or that you sort of look for on resumes or in candidates? And maybe that's a no. I just thought I'd put it out there. Christian, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't think one thing I would say, other thing we do when we look at candidates, we ask for candidates to submit a written statement, like we call a feminist statement, because we want to make sure they're feminists, of course. So it's something that we ask them to write their own feminist statement and how they see themselves as feminists. And that gives us a great idea about their own characteristics, their own journey as feminists, and to see if they truly represent like our values. But I don't really look at, when I review resumes, too much of what they did in college. And I'll tell you why. Because I was a college student and I had to work. I was a first generation college student. I had to work to pay for myself through school. Now, I did do some activities, but paying my way through school was super important. So I had to work, and that limited what I could do. And sometimes I think you have to be careful to not over focus on actual groups and things students were involved in, because there's some students who have to work. It's going to limit their ability to be in groups. And I don't want to put too much effort in that, because when the student has to work and take care of their family or do certain things, their focus is going to be providing, and those are marginalized students. And so I try to balance it out and look at that perspective and not say, okay, well, you didn't do any after school or extracurricular activities in college, when a student may well be working to provide for their family, or maybe working to pay for school and get themselves through school. So I always consider that when I look at resumes and just kind of ask, what did you do during school? Did you work? You kind of look at more to it than just assuming that they weren't involved.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, do you have any, or Melanie, either of you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just kind of what I said. There's a lot more groups out there than when I was in school. So I did Black Student Union, Asian Student Association, and Malloy Chemical Society. And we did volunteering for different organizations. On top of that, I sought out my own organizations. But kind of going back to what Christian said, for us, for employing, we don't really look at background either, because there is that, a lot of people have to work and don't have time to do all these extracurricular activities. So that's why we go back to potential. We don't ask for written statement, but we ask about some questions about underrepresented, racial wealth gap, and we don't necessarily need you to know it coming in, but you need to be open to it, understand that there's an issue, understand that what we're doing is trying to move the dial a little bit. We had someone join our team recently that had no idea about anything, but she's really smart. She knew there was an issue. She knew that we were helping it. And seeing her go from, I have no idea, I'm uncomfortable saying, she's not a person of color, going from being uncomfortable to saying Black, to talking about the racial wealth gap, quoting all these stats after 6 months. I mean, that's just amazing.
That's great. Great. So students, I'm just going to put you on notice. I have one more question, and then I want to be able to turn it over to you, because you tuned in today because you wanted to learn about all of this. So if you want to start thinking about that and putting them in the chat, now's your time. So panelists, I would just like to know, what do you love most about the work that you do, and what keeps you up at night? Sarah?
Other than my children. Who never sleep. They're 5 and 7. You'd think they'd learned. What do I love about the work our students, right? There is nothing better than seeing our students soar and being able to be a small part of that. So that is the joy. There's also much joy in working with the staff. It is a group 35 strong of committed, passionate advocates, and that is inspiring every day. Other than my children, what keeps me up at night is the staff. It's not my students, because I think the staff are worrying more about the students. They're on that sort of front, the direct service piece, whereas I have a little bit of remove from it. So what keeps me up at night is our staff. I worry deeply about the impact of the many crises that are happening right now. The being containers for so much of what our students are facing, as well as facing themselves, our staff. So that I worry about.
Mm-hmm. Christian?
Sarah, I'm feeling you on the children. Besides my 16-month-old and bottles and diapers and throughout the night. Also, I think the biggest thing that keeps me up at night is just figuring out how we can give better voice and to those whose voice has been taken from them. That's probably the biggest thing. But I love my job. I love what I do. I love being able to just really figure out how to amplify the voices of those who've been silenced. I love being able to speak up and speak out authentically. I'm in a position to be able to do that. And I think a lot of jobs people aren't able to do that, but I'm able to do that in my role. So I value that I can be free in my speech, and be very authentic and say what I feel and represent that in truth, and be unapologetic about it. But, we're professional, but unapologetic about it. But because I think it's what needs to be said, and so I appreciate being able to say, hey, there's a problem here. We have so-and-so who's not hearing the words or not hearing the voices of the people, or we are people who are trying to suppress our vote. I appreciate the fact that I can do that in my job, and say, call your senators, this is enjoyment for me, but I still stay up at night thinking about how can we amplify the voice of these people more. That keeps me up.
Right. And Melanie, I think you'll agree with the sleep deprivation aspect of child raising, but
Yeah. So I'll round it out. I have a 2.5-year-old girl that is as fierce and feisty, if not more, than I was, and I say sorry to my mom every day, and thank her for not throwing me out the window. So what do I love about my job? The potential of what we can do. So the biggest thing that we're running with right now, it's an initiative called One Philadelphia, Opportunity and Equity in Philadelphia. It's creating an integrated citywide tech ecosystem that supports students from kindergarten through after college. Kids come to us and start coding at age 8, and, literacy levels as they are in Philadelphia, they come to us and they're not at the reading level they should be. And so our instructors are spending time helping them read what they need to do to be able to code instead of being able to jump right into coding. So with One Philadelphia, we're trying to partner with literacy groups, math groups, digital literacy, and then 3rd through 8th, working with groups that specialize in PSSA prep, and then in high school, internships and mentoring, and in college, overcoming the barriers to get into college by aligning ourselves with Drexel and Temple curriculum, getting them rotational internships with different organizations throughout Philly, and then access to VCs and accelerators and incubators if they want to do that. So that's really exciting for me, and that's what I love right now. What keeps me up at night? I talked to Sylvester, our CEO, our founder, about it, and I always ask, are we too late? Is this work too late? Is the general wealth cap too large? Are the systems that are in place too intricate to be broken? People say the system is broken. No, the system is not broken. It works for the people it need to work for. Is that system so complicated that we can't break it down, right? Then I see the students echoing what everybody says. Our last group of students in our online course, you take 9 weeks to create a 5-page website, and you have to identify the problem that you want to do. We had them identify a community related problem. You have to interview people, you have to research the content, you have to write the content, and then you have to code the site. And all of them, one was talking about police reform, and this is the problem, and came up with solutions to the problem. Food desert in Philly, how to solve that, climate change and what to do for that. And these are students, I think this crop was 13 through 16. And I look at that and I think about, maybe if we're able to move the dial a little bit, there's a generation that'll follow us that will move it that much further. Fred Hampton was murdered at 21 and he did the Rainbow Coalition. Greta Thunberg is 17, Malala is 23. That potential is what leaves me with hope.
great. Those are big things to keep you up at night, Melanie. It's a wonder you sleep at all.
Well, yeah.
Appreciate that that you're thinking about those. It's for sure. So we do have a question from a student who's asking if they should end up in a work environment, whether it's social justice oriented or not, are there any tips for integrating passion for social justice into places that don't necessarily emphasize that kind of work? It's a great question. Go ahead, Melanie.
So I was in for-profit, the healthcare company, and I volunteered and then joined the board of a nonprofit. So I started with Intercultural Family Services. It's a social work organization. I was a tutor, and they have a dance program for low-income kids, so I was a dance teacher there. And then I also do animal welfare work, and I joined the board of Citizens for No Kill Philly. And all of this I did outside of my day job, the job that paid me. So this was like my second work that fulfilled that need in me until I was ready to make the transition to making it my full-time job. So that's what I did personally.
That's great. Christian?
Yeah, similar. I did the same thing. I worked mental health, and I worked for-profit healthcare, a managed care organization. So what I did on the side was I worked as volunteered. I shouldn't say worked. I volunteered as a community organizer for an organization called Wake Up Arizona. This is when I lived in Arizona, Wake Up Arizona. And I would get out and I would volunteer. I would help register people to vote. I would do phone banks. I would do bond overrides. I just volunteered. And then I wound up eventually started working on local candidates campaigns. And then I would volunteer. And then eventually I started actually becoming a campaign manager for some candidates on the side. So I just and I also was on some nonprofit school boards. So it was like the same thing. I kind of just balanced it. I used it as part of my volunteer, just to engage my passion. I volunteered in 20 school boards as well, volunteered in nonprofit boards, just to balance out the act.
Great. Sarah?
I think the only thing I'd add is that you can always bring that lens to the work, even though that's not maybe the focus of the work, although it really should be. What are the policies and practices at your work that require shifts when thinking through and viewing it through a social justice lens? At Futures, we're really trying to take an anti-racist lens to all of our work. And so, our work is college access, but being anti-racist is part of our mission. So I want all of my staff to be thinking, okay, in this area, where can I bring that, and where does that lens help us move forward? So that, I think you can always bring that to your work as well as the volunteer piece that folks are talking about.
That's great. Great answers. Students, do you have any more questions? See if that chat number goes up at all. Well, if they think of them, you can type them in. So I will pose just one final question, and that is, any final thoughts or advice to these young people who are, I don't know if everybody's freshman through senior, maybe we have grad students. I don't know exactly the profile of everybody that's listening in, but if you're considering a career in social justice, what advice would you give to people who are starting out? Sarah, can we start with you?
Sure. Well, you're doing it, right? So kudos for showing up today, because that's huge. I recognize that this semester looks so different than any other semester, and the pressures that our students are facing are enormous. So being here and showing up for these sort of things, right? And you can take it a step further and connect, right? So where you can develop the relationships, I think is super helpful to your search and for your career. I think the social justice, I don't know if it's the world arena in Philadelphia, is a interwoven net, which is wonderful. But you will see folks sort of sliding in and out of various spaces, and so keeping those connections would be my number one piece of advice. Just make sure that you stay in touch with people, connect with people, go the extra mile to get folks' contact information, and be curious about how they're doing their work and how you can add to it.
Great. Melanie, what are your thoughts?
So just being aware that don't stress about getting into social justice. I know get a job is always a thing that you try and do after. I mean, if you need to get a job other than Solicitor's Office Justice, do it, and then get the skills you need, create the relationships, you can't do it now, but go to meetup events, go to networking events, find things. Philly, there's so many things to do in Philly. That's one of the greater parts of the city. You know, Sarah talked about everything being interwoven. It's really creepy how things are interwoven sometimes. But yeah, connect with everyone. And above all else, no matter what you do, find what that passion is for you, find what you want to be an advocate for, and be involved of it in some way, whether it's you doing it yourself, joining an organization that does it, or you and a couple of friends going and doing something on your own.
And Christian, bat and clean up here.
I would just echo what Sarah and Melanie have said, and I think just making sure that you're following your passion. You know, social justice work is kind of embedded in everything we do in some way. You know, organizations, corporations are finding more ways to be socially responsible. And I think it's just really important that you recognize like how to find a balance. And I think balance is going to be super important because social justice work is heavy work and it's passionate work and it's important work, but it's heavy work. So I would just recommend that you find a healthy balance of getting to this work, but also self-care, taking care of yourself, and just, you know, just following the passion that's really true to you. And if you do that, you're going to do the right career path that's for you. And you can always change. This is a great part about going to college and having a career. You can always change and that's okay. You can always go back and it's okay. So don't ever feel like you're stuck if you start out a place and that doesn't work for you. You can always go back and start over or shift up and change. So just start out when your passion is leading you and follow that and trust yourself.
Chemistry major. Just remember that. Chemistry major.
That's exactly right. I mean, there are just a million things to do in this world. So sometimes it's defined for us, but I think that's super rare. So I think it's following your interests and what is your gut telling you to do and what do you feel really strongly about. And it might not come, you know, immediately. It might take you a couple left turns and wrong turns, and although there's no wrong turns in your career, I don't think, but really just so appreciate Sarah, Melanie, and Christian, you sharing your careers with us, your wisdom and guidance. And I wish I could see the students as I know you do too. This was, of course, we would love to have done this face to face, but students do appreciate you being here and learning from these people who, by the way, not only shared their time with us, but also did that fine balance of finding a quiet place in their home where their children would not barge in and interrupt. So, I mean, as students, we all have these, we all have, you know, different things flying in and out of our window view here, but just ladies, I so appreciate you being here and sharing your time and treasure with us. So thank you so very much. So from St. Joseph's University, we'll, unless we have one final question, which I think the students would have asked by now, we'll end today and appreciate the work that you do and keep doing it. So important. Thank you so much.
Yeah, feel free to email me, everyone.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You have the contact information. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.